You know, I never give lecture. My way of teaching is never to give lectures, always through discussion. And I'm always saying, at the end of my sentence, the last one who is looking at me will be the first I'm going to ask questions. So it's so good to have you also close. That's okay. Look, I was told I have some questions here that are not exactly related to the topic, but I will address the questions, of course. But before this, I was asked to say something about the future of Muslim students in the West, in the States, or your situation. And I think let me start with some of the points that are important for me when it comes to understanding the very meaning of being a student, acquiring knowledge or seeking knowledge and getting degrees and at the end being involved in what should be the student life in this country. If you come back to the very meaning of knowledge, seeking knowledge, getting knowledge, and getting knowledge in order to get degrees and then to work and to get a job. Now, this could be something which is to normalize our presence in the student life and to do what others can do by trying to get knowledge and degrees. Now, if you come to the very essence of the question here, the future of Muslim students, there is one qualification here and there is one dimension, which is the Muslim student. Is a Muslim student different from all the other students on the campus? And if so, what are the differences? And I would say, as to the fundamentals, no difference. But it might be that from where we are talking, from within the Islamic tradition, we should ask ourselves, what do we mean by being a Muslim and a student at the same time? Now we come back and you try to get something which is based on our tradition. And based on our tradition is that we keep on repeating in Islam that our relationship to knowledge is essential. Why? Because at the starting point of the whole revelation, in fact, there is this in the chapter in the Surah 96 of the Quran, the first 5 verses are telling us something which is very clear about the essence of Islam. Two things are important and we don't meditate or ponder over them in a very deep way. We keep on repeating, yes, Islam is celebrating knowledge because after بعد أعوذ من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, what do we have? اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم. So the first 5 verses that were the first to be revealed is read in the name of your Lord. And when you say our Lord, the Rabb, in fact in Arabic, a Rabb is connected to the very essence of التربية. الرب والتربية. والتربية is education. In fact, and this is the way I'm translating the word in the book that I wrote on the Prophet, the Messenger, peace be upon him, when he is, it is said that the first name of God is Allah, and by the way, just to be clear, Allah is in Arabic what God is in English. It's not, Allah is the Arabs' God or the God of the Arabs. It's just the word in Arabic. Because the Christians and the Coptic in Egypt, when they speak about God, they speak about Allah in Arabic. Okay, it's Allah in Arabic. This is the point. So we don't have a specific God. It's the same one and unique God. It's the one God. And in the Quran, what we find is Ar-Rabb. Aqra bismi rabbik. And we translate it into English, read in the name of your Lord. And in fact, the very precise translation is read in the name of your educator. The greatest educator, Rabbul Alameen, is the one who is providing tarbiyah, education. So when we come to this understanding, we understand two things that are fundamental in our relationship. And once again, we can go and we can tell you, you know what, you are students, get the knowledge, get the degree, find a job. Now, if you enter the world of knowledge, you better be equipped with a deep understanding of what we are talking about here. Because what the messenger, peace be upon him, responded is that he was illiterate. He didn't know how to read. And he said, I can't read. He said it once, he said it twice. And the third time it is said, read Bismi Rabbik. Iqra Bismi Rabbik means read in the name of your educator. So what you can't do alone with his power, you can do. And you can say, okay, that's it. It's just he didn't know how to read, and then with the power of God, he was able. But in fact, it is not what it is said here. It is said, with the power of God, you can, but it also gives something which is essential in the whole understanding is your knowledge should have and has a meaning. And the meaning of your knowledge is to serve him in the name of his power and to understand the world in the name of his teaching. And this is essential. Why? Because all the first verses coming in the Quran that we read very quickly because they are very short. You know, we tend to think that because it's short it's not deep. And in fact, the messenger has something which is very well known. He had this very specific qualities that jawami' al-kalim. In fact, very, very few words, deep meaning. You know, you have people who have long sentences and it's very superficial. He has very short sentence, very short statements, but very deep. And the Quran, the revelation at the beginning is talking about what? Talking about the conversion of the heart. In fact, it was what came from the text was change the way you look at the world. You look at a tree and you say this is a tree. You look at nature and you say this is nature. What came with the revelation is don't look at the elements as elements, but look at the elements as signs. There is a presence between before and beyond the world. And everything in the Quran is about this, is the Quran that you have to read is telling you, read the world. Al-Qamar, the moon, wa-shams, the sun, and the mountains, and everything. You read the text, and the text is telling you, now it's time to read the world in a new way. You convert your heart and you read the word in a new way. Meaning what? What is the difference between saying, these are beautiful flowers, and these are just elements, and it's beautiful, than to say, these beautiful flowers are signs, meaning they are telling you something else beyond themselves. A sign is an element plus a meaning. You arrive in front of just before the traffic light and it's green. The element is green. The sign is you can go ahead. If you look and you stop in front of the traffic light and to say it's green, this is it. You didn't get the meaning, you just get the color. You need to understand the meaning. What the Quran is saying from the very beginning is, be careful. Your knowledge is not only to get the elements, it's to understand the meanings. And when you look at a tree, say thank you, because the meaning is, this is a gift from him. The tree is nature for you. The sign of the tree is a gift from him. So say thank you. When you look at the beauty of the universe, it's beautiful flowers, and what we say in Arabic is Masha Allah. This is the will of God, which is thank him. And when Luqman was teaching his son, what did he say? Anishkurillah. Thank God. Thank God. And the point is for us, how do you say thank God? Why I'm going to thank him? When I understand that the knowledge that I have about the world, and the knowledge that I have about the book is just reminding me that He gave us all this out of His mercy and His love. All this is about His love. He gave this with love. And as students, the very understanding here is, what meaning do you give to your knowledge? What do you want to do with your knowledge? Is this a knowledge to celebrate and to thank? Or is it knowledge to get power and titles? Are you getting knowledge to serve, or are you getting knowledge to be served? Are you getting knowledge for fame, or are you getting knowledge to be useful on earth? And this is why you listen to what the messenger was saying. Allahumma nas'aluka ilman nafi'a. Oh God, we ask you useful knowledge. What is useful knowledge? Useful knowledge is a knowledge that is helping me to be better. It's helping the society to be reformed, and it's helping me to face my death by saying, I did what I can. This is the knowledge that I had to get. So it's essential here. Useful knowledge is good for me, useful for humanity, and useful for my death. It's going to be something that I can come back to Him and say, and what is knowledge here is, tell me the way you deal with knowledge. I will know the way you respect your mind, your intellect. And you know, Shatibi, a great scholar, was saying, following Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, al-Juwayni, great scholars, were saying, one of the 5 main principles of Islam is to respect your intellect, to protect your intellect. You have a mind. What are you doing with your mind? Are you wasting your time watching movies that are making you more silly after than before? Or are you using your mind to read books and world and science and nature and human beings? Because in fact, in English even, you have something which is very important. You meet someone and you can read him or read her. Aqra, read. I'm a book. I'm a book. And the respect that you have towards me is to read me. But I expect from you to read me and to have a useful reading, a useful knowledge about me. Meaning what? You are not my judge. You are my brother and sister in humanity. Read me to help me to be better, not to judge me to get power. You get it? And knowledge is a means. Is but a means. You get the knowledge and then you have to put meanings to this knowledge. And this knowledge is to be useful. So from the very beginning of Islam, Iqra bismi rabbika meant get knowledge and get the substance, but never forget the meaning. Why are you trying to get this knowledge? In which way you are trying to get it? And from which sources? And the Quran is telling us from the very beginning, it's going to come from the Quran, the revelation, but it's going to come from nature and from the society. It's going to come from what we call today secular. But in fact, all this business about sacred sciences and secular sciences, in fact, in real life, if we think about what is sacred and what is not sacred, in fact, everything is sacred when you put meanings, when you put objectives. Why I'm trying to get this to the meaning of knowledge is always to serve, always to try to get the knowledge to do something better. Now you have all this, and say, okay, what is the future of Muslim students in the state? What we can see now is that we have some Muslim students, they are coming to, or you have been born maybe, or you deal with this university, and in fact, they are getting knowledge. They want the degree, and they get the degrees. They can be doctors, professors, and they can have all the titles, and at the end, what seems to be important is to get the job. A very good position, a good salary, and I am a good American. That's not the point. If now you come to what I'm saying, all the landscape, the backdrop, knowing what we mean about knowledge, you come and you enter the university, the first thing which is important is whatever you are studying now. Why? Why are you studying what you are studying? What do you want to get? Do you get the knowledge for the degree, or do you get the knowledge to now become a useful human being with this knowledge? The degree, it's important. The degree is an instrument. The fact that, for example, I have the title of teaching at one university, it helps me, but what? It helps me to be acknowledged as a university professor. This is nothing. This is for the people. At the end, what is important is how do you use this knowledge to serve the people and to serve humanity? So ask yourself, now you are a medical doctor, you are a computer scientist, or you are a sociologist, or a political expert, whatever is your field, the starting point for a Muslim student, and this should be for all the students, not only the Muslim students. And if you are useful in this university, is to ask the question around you, and to make it clear, why? What do you want to get? So, it's the very essence of useful knowledge. Now, this knowledge means that whatever you do, and in every way you deal with knowledge, you ask the objectives of this knowledge. And then the ethical dimension, what I was talking about this morning about ethics, is the values, is how do I deal with this? How am I using this knowledge to serve humanity and to try to serve my society? And my society means the United States for you now, in the best way. So, how do you get this knowledge, and what do you want to do with this knowledge is something which is important. And by saying this, it means that now, how am I getting the knowledge? You have two choices. If you come here to get the degree, you can be very quick to just being shaped and get the pattern of the sometimes perceived good students. You listen to what the professors are saying, and you know how it takes to get the degree. You just repeat. And some of our students today, they are within the system, students who just want the degree, so they repeat. What is important in every field is not to repeat, is to get the knowledge to be useful, and to get the knowledge to be useful, you have to shape a critical mind. And what is a critical mind is to ask questions. And ask questions, and even sometimes to challenge the teacher. It means that a student who wants to get the deep knowledge is not someone who is repeating, is the one who is questioning. In every field, whatever you try to get, you question. And you question, and this is coming from the very deep understanding even of our Islamic sciences. For example, when the ordinary Muslims were going to a scholar to ask him about a fatwa, a legal opinion, and they got the response. They had the duty to ask, where does it come from? Tell me your sources, give me your evidences. One of the messenger's companion, peace be upon him, went to him and said, okay, it was in a battle. And said, look, it was with Badr. Are we here because it's a revelation, or are we here because it's your opinion? I said, no, it's my opinion. Look at the companion. He was dealing with the last authority, the last messenger, and he got the book. And he said, he is strong. That's not good. This is not where we should be. We should protect water. Like this, we will prevent the enemies to get the water. So your strategy is wrong. He is asking him, is this authority coming? Is it a revelation? Is it like the Quran? If it's the Quran, I'm not going to say anything. But if it's you, it might be wrong. Look at this. He's questioning the knowledge and the competence of someone who was getting the book. Meaning by this, make your mind. Wake up. Many of the students now with their professors, they don't even dare to do half of it. He said it, I repeat it. My degree, my exams, and this is not the way. First ask why you are getting this and how are you going with this knowledge to be useful. The second thing which is important is to challenge this knowledge with question. But to do this means that you have to read, means that you have to make your mind, means that you have critical wisdom. And the best students that I always had in my life are not the students that are repeating what I'm saying during the exam. These are not students, they are parents. They repeat, and they got the degree. The right student is, I repeat what could be right, and I question what is questionable and where I have questions. So I make up my mind, always being with the knowledge, trying to get it. And you will see that all the Quran, which is the ultimate knowledge for the Muslims, is coming from where? It's coming from, in fact, questions coming from the history, and the Quran is an answer, but coming from questions. So I would say that the role of Muslim students in the future is be careful. Don't be happy if you are only students getting the degree and you repeat and you get the job and you get the money. What is necessary now is to get knowledge, to ask the objectives, and to get a critical mind. This is what is expected. And to do all this means that your presence on the campus and with your organization is not to try always, as I see this, MSA is doing this and it's good, but it's not enough, to organize lectures about Islam just to spread around a better knowledge of Islam. That's fine, you can do this. But the best way to show who you are as human beings is not always as a Muslim student organization to organize lectures on Islam by Muslims dealing with contemporary Muslim issues or Islamic issues. That's fine, you can do it. Are you students? Are you studying medical science and law and all this? Come and organize on the campus lectures where we come with critical questions that are question and fundamental questions for all. Show that what you are bringing on campus is not only celebrating knowledge and being completely scared of the professors, but coming and questioning the knowledge and the objectives. What is now the ethical ground for medicine or politics and democracy? And here you deal with people of other faiths, people who are not only Muslims, that they have the same concerns and they come with the same question. The quality of the Muslim presence on campus is not only to speak about Islam, it's to speak about all the topics in a specific way, in a new way, to have this distinction. You know, many of our brothers, they think our distinction should be in the way we dress. That's fine. We should and we can. And we should show that we have this modesty. And I'm always saying be careful with dress modesty without intellectual modesty. I'm talking about intellectual humility, but there is also something which is deep, spiritually speaking, which is intellectual modesty. It's the way you are dealing with your mind, the way we are dealing with your intellect. But within the campus, the distinction of a Muslim presence is this capacity to take the knowledge from everywhere, to question the knowledge, and to come with questions that are questioning the objective of knowledge. Because you are in an institution where the people are telling you, you know what, here we are within academia, and there is a specific way to deal with topics, and that's true. But now, all the people who are telling you that in knowledge there is no ideology, or in science there is no ideology, are themselves driven by ideology. There is no knowledge and no science without ideology. And you, in this, you should come with your own questions. You should come with your own critical mind and take from this university whatever you can, and then also ask the questions. But, and this will be my last point, to do that, you understand that you have to walk on two legs. One is your own tradition. Don't be illiterate from an Islamic viewpoint and knowledgeable from a scientific viewpoint in your field and end up being unable to be critical from within your tradition. You need to get the knowledge. And you live in a country where it's possible now, as students, to get the knowledge of your religion. It means read. It means to know where you come from. And it doesn't mean that you accept everything. But all the young Muslims who are not accepting or who are rejecting, the only concern that I have with some of them is that they are rejecting out of ignorance and not without knowledge or not without enough. The great majority you have who are very knowledgeable and they are asking good questions. I remember one of my students in Oxford. He was a Muslim coming from a Muslim family, and at one point he had doubts. And he was coming with very tough questions and good questions, and I liked him. Because he was trying to get answers not in a passive way. You say, oh, my father, my mother were Muslims, and then I'm following. No, I'm not following, I'm questioning. I'm questioning. And all questions are legitimate. All questions, the deep question, and the deepest question, and all the questions that you may have in your mind, never be scared to ask. And we have to ask. But to pretend to be good Muslims while you have lots of questions that are unanswered in your mind, that's not the right way. So you need to come with your tradition, with your critical thinking, and question the imams, question the teachers, question your family, and say, okay, this is my religion, I want to understand. Because to pretend at the surface of your religion that you are committed, that's not going to work. And in this society, you have to come with the critical questions, asking about the principles, trying to get, so we need this knowledge. And as much as we need this knowledge, you need to be also knowledgeable in your field. And with these two legs, you build an identity which is solid as to the principles and open as to the horizon that we can do with people. And come and be a driving force in this society which is using knowledge not only to get a salary or a job, but using knowledge to ask the deep questions and the deep ethical questions in every field. So this is the future of the students, the Muslim students here, is even to think about what it means to have a Muslim association on campus. It means to deal with all this discussion, and to show how much we are open and we want to question, we want to listen, and not only when it's Muslims. You know, sometimes I'm attending some of the lectures when the Muslim scholar comes and speaks. The Muslims are here. When it's someone from another faith, the Muslims are leaving the room. What's that? Since when we only listen to Muslims and we disrespect the voice of people of other faiths? We have to learn, we have to take. And this is where not only we have to do this, but we have to invite scholars and professors to be involved in our discussion from other faiths and questioning the ethical dimension of all what we have to do. So the two legs are important, our tradition, our field, and then to come with the critical question, to have a better understanding of the society, and to be our distinctiveness should be about the way we ask questions and the way we are dealing with our critical thinking and the objectives of this knowledge. And all this is coming from what I was saying at the beginning, is the landscape, the background from where we come, if we understand the very meaning of knowledge in Islam. At the end, we don't worship knowledge. We should worship God. Knowledge is just a means. Don't worship, within academia, all this business about having title, all this. Be careful with academia. Academia could be a jail if you don't understand that it just means that we are getting to go further and to serve the people. And last point. there is something that we learn within academia as students is to try to study and to get our, one of the main dimensions. You should be with your mind the way you could be with food and gifts. You should show solidarity. And the best among you as students is not the one who's getting the best marks. Is the one who can get the best marks and show solidarity with others who could have problems. So if you are happy to be within a campus and you don't come back to what is happening in the society, you know how many in this society cannot just enter university because they don't have money and they don't have knowledge. How much of your time do you give to people who need to get some knowledge? I was 17 years old when I started to, I finished my high school and I was entering university. At 18 I was starting to teach. And I was teaching some of these people in Geneva. It's a rich city within Switzerland, to try to teach to some of these students who had no opportunity, they were poor or they were marginalized. And from the beginning, some people get money and they have to show solidarity. Some of you, you have knowledge and you have to show solidarity. Share what you have. Share knowledge. And you know in the Quran it is said, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, and they give from what we gave them. And when you were given knowledge, you give knowledge. And you have time, give time. If you have heart and generosity, give. From everything, the best among you is the best for humanity, even as a student. So think about it. What do you give to the people around you? Many people who don't expect this from you, they say, that's good, you are getting knowledge, study for your exams, and you will do it. But I'm sorry to tell you, to study for your exams and not to give between two exams, there is something missing. There is something missing. As to the very understanding of useful knowledge. Useful knowledge is knowledge to serve, and to give, and to transform. This is what you have to ask yourself as Muslim students, and the floor is open for your questions. I know it's demanding, and it's not easy to listen to what I'm saying, but who told you that you are coming to listen to an easy lecture?
This whole idea of giving back knowledge. So I'm a graduate student about to finish, and part of my dilemma is how do I decide who do you prioritize? For me, I feel like there is a loss of dialogue in Arab countries and among everything. And there's a loss of dialogue here, from religion to questioning politics, and both sides are guilty. How do you determine, as a Muslim, as a Middle Eastern woman, how do you prioritize who you want to give back to?
I would say that this is exactly the problem, is the way you put the question. How do you prioritize as a Muslim and as a Muslim woman? No, that's not the way. I would say that there is something that we should get as human beings. You prioritize not because you are Muslim or because you are women. You prioritize because you listen to yourself, what your skills. You look at yourself and say, okay, what first, you have skills and qualities and desires. You want to do something with your life. So listen to yourself. And then what is going to come as something which is important, listening to yourself and transform this into something which is ethical from an Islamic viewpoint and useful because you want to do it as a woman. But first, the priorities are coming from you, where you think that you can contribute the more, that you think that you can do something which is, with professionalism. Do it with professionalism, and especially when you want to give. There are people, when they work for, it's just something which is sometimes very disturbing. When you work for a business or an enterprise or for, have a corporation, because there is a salary We tend to think that this is where we need professionalism, and when we do something else, when it deals with human beings, we are less professional. You know, there is no salary, no accountability. And in fact, that's exactly the opposite. You need to be, not the opposite, it should be similar. You should be as professional when you deal with human beings, and when you deal with your own qualities and capacity, you have to be professional. And this is where you remember the saying of the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he said, Allah yuhibbu idha amala ahadukum amalan yutqina. When God likes when you do something, that you do it with professional, that you manage it, you know exactly what you have to do. So who is going to tell you this? Don't ask, oh, as a Muslim woman. No. If someone is pushing you to do something and you think that you don't have the skills, this is not what you want to do, you say, no, that's not. Let me do what I want to do in the right way, and I will prioritize from where I am, not from where you are expecting me to be. So listen to yourself. Don't let even your parents, your father, your mother, they want to impose and say, no, I'm sorry. This is where the way you see me, this is from where I am. This is where and who I am. Mm-hmm. Listen to yourself and make it clear to everybody, your professors, your teachers, your parents, your society. The first decide for me, it's me. It's me. And this is to be autonomous. Don't let anyone decide for yourself what are your skills. You can have advice, but take the decision. Take yourself the decision. And then you go for the ethical ground and to decide what you can do. Yes?
I am majoring in both computer science and geology. And in both fields, whenever I have to do any kind of research, I'm always disturbed by the fact that there is a lack of Muslim and in general Arab contribution to the scientific work. And I'm always finding myself questioning why that is. Why there is this lack of contribution in the scientific fields from the Muslim and Arab world, especially in the latest ages. I'm familiar with the argument that the Arab knowledge from the Golden Age is the basis for a lot of the knowledge that came later on. But
no, don't worry, I'm not going to start with this. I won't going to an answer to asking me why are we weak. I'm not going to tell you we were great. Don't worry, that's not my answer. Yes, there was a time, once upon a time. Now, there is a problem in the Muslim majority countries and now where it's true. Our contribution in sciences, our contribution in these fields has been very, very weak and very, very marginal over the last centuries, not only now. Now there is something which is happening. You have Muslims in Muslim majority countries, and in some countries it's improving. In others, you can see, for example, now in Asia, it's improving. You have more and more Muslims that could be involved in this. And now we have a Muslim presence in the West. And now it's time to ask yourself, not why are we not contributing, but in which way you are now going to contribute. And my question is, please, if you are questioning from an Islamic viewpoint, why don't we contribute enough in science? That's fine. We can ask, we need more creativity and more scientific minds, and we need to do this. My question here is, from where you are in computer sciences and in this, is to be very, very sharp, very, very knowledgeable about your field. But now, as someone who is coming with a conscience, to ask yourself, your contribution should be the added value in the scientific field. And the scientific field, it's the added value, it's not to come with a new discovery. It could be. But what sciences are in need of today is the objectives, in which we are going to use this knowledge. So this is where you, as someone who can be an expert in this field, your added value is to bring something which is using the knowledge that you have for human values, or by promoting ethics, in which way you come with this. So to compete only for the sake of knowledge is not going to be enough now. The world is in need of people who have knowledge at the highest level, and they are ready also to question the ends, the goals, the purposes of the knowledge they are getting. So now you are in that field, I would say, get as much as you can. Don't ask yourself why the Muslims are not here. Now you are here. This is now you. And as a student with your ethics and your roots in terms of ethical principles, what is going to be your contribution in that field? Are you going to compete and to be as good as they are, or are you questioning the whole things, the whole... You know, we have some Muslims, when they deal with Islamic economy, you know, they call it Islamic economy. And all the point is, okay, we are trying to have our own means, but we want to make as much money as they want. So it's capitalism and consumerism in Islamic dress. Yeah? It's to make capitalism halal by changing the means. I'm sorry, that's not the point. I don't want to enter into a system where the consumerist attitude and the profits are just what is driving the whole business. It's just to ask the questions, to put more ethics in the economy. So you should enter, get a very, very good command and understanding and of the whole means, and then you add in that field the ends. This is to come back to history, but by looking at the future. So yes, we don't have many Muslims, but now things are changing. We have lots, millions now, millions of students who are at the forefront of all the knowledges everywhere. And my concern is, I see too many of these students, they just want to do and to be as the others. So they pray, they fast, but there is no distinctiveness in the way they deal with their knowledge. They use knowledge to make money. And I'm sorry, the very essence of anything that is coming from spiritualities and religions is knowledge is not for money. Knowledge is power. Knowledge could be money, but if you are a human being, knowledge is serving. Serving humanity, not using humanity. So ask yourself where you are in this picture. Yes?
Earlier you mentioned...
The next one, I promise, is you. I saw you.
Okay.
You mentioned intellectual modesty. What do you mean by that?
You have no idea?
I know what it literally means.
So what do you understand?
I understand.
Now I'm going to challenge you. This is the way I teach.
So I'm saying you should pick and choose what you should...
Pick and choose. What? Say it again?
Should you pick and choose what you want to learn, or that's what I'm kind of understanding.
What do you understand by intellectual modesty?
I don't know.
Not at all.
I mean, I understand what having modesty means.
What does it mean?
It means respecting yourself and really respecting yourself. So intellectual and having knowledge that betters you, is that what you mean?
Okay, is there someone who is understanding what I mean by intellectual modesty? You all kept silent and say, okay, let me be it. One day we'll know. Yes?
Yeah, knowing that you can't know everything, and at the same time, you shouldn't say what you know about everything.
Yes. Is there a difference between humility and modesty? What is the difference between humility and modesty?
You never thought of this question.
Sorry?
You never thought of this question.
So that's good. Never, better later than never, isn't it? So, is there a difference or not? So what is the difference?
The difference is modesty, acknowledging that you don't know everything, and humility is acknowledging the fact that you can't know everything.
Say it again.
I think modesty means the fact that you don't know everything, and humility is acknowledging the fact that you can't, even if you wanted, know everything.
Okay. What do you want to say?
Well, I was just thinking that modesty is that you're not showing off your knowledge, but using it for good, more pure purposes. And perhaps humility is being teachable, being able to learn and not thinking you know everything.
Yes.
And then
So between the two, I think you got the point. Humility is that when you are seeking knowledge, you acknowledge the fact that you are always in the process of getting knowledge, that you don't get it all, and that you don't know everything, that you are trying your best. Modesty is a bit different. Modesty is the way you deal with what you know, not the way you deal with what you don't know. Modesty is a way where, knowing what you know, you are not showing off, you are dealing with what you know in a way where you are trying to use it for the better. So humility is about what is missing. Modesty is the way you deal with what you have, with what you are dealing with, is the way you deal with your knowledge. And the two dimensions are very important, because very often Muslims are talking about modesty in the way they dress. Is the way you are trying to send a message to the people, I am not what I appear to be. There is something which is deep. Intellectual modesty is exactly this. Yes, there is something deep beyond my knowledge, which is, it's not important to know what I know. What is important is to know the way I use what I know. Got that?
Yeah, I get it.
Happy. Yes.
Dr. Ramadan, thank you so much for coming today. I'm going to speak from my experience in life. I mean, I'm those type of students who, I was that kind of student who came here to get a degree, to add it to my. So I'm from Morocco, and when I came here, I started being questioned about, like, why are you Muslim? Why you? So those questions made me, like start thinking, get the deep thinking in myself, saying, why am I this way? And so I start reading and trying to get knowledge, but sometimes it's really hard. Where should I start? Where? I mean, the Quran is not an easy book. Sometimes I read and I find it so hard, and so my question first is, how do I start? I mean, what do I look for? And second question, because I listen to you a lot, and I know how much, you can get in trouble sometimes when you start sharing the knowledge. And at what point, when do you start sharing, and because you get a lot of opposition, people like, what's your agenda? Or why do you think this way? It is a doubt, So, and as a person, I would like to share, so I don't know why should I start working on first to, at the same time I'm working on my degree, and at the same time I'm working on knowing why I'm Muslim, why do we work it out?
Yes, I think that what you are saying, the fact that, it's not either or, it's the two together. So you are trying to get your degree, and that is good. And it's good also to have this critical thinking about, okay, from where shall I start? And this is where, for example, all the people who are trying to understand Islam by starting by reading the Quran say, okay, no, that's not the right way. The Quran is not an easy book to read. So I'm always saying, if you want to get an introduction to Islam, the best way is always to start with the Prophet's life, the seerah, his biography. Why? Because this is why you see how he was translating the Quranic teachings and lessons into practical way of life. And then what is also important when you are in campus, and this is why it's very, I remember the time of being a student. This is where don't do this alone. You have students here, and you need to find people having the same concern, whether you can be together, have study circles where you share views and questions. And as much as you might feel sometimes that you are fragile when you go very deep to the questions, you know, I'm always repeating this. What you feel as weaknesses is part of your strength. Acknowledging your weaknesses is strength. But of course, if you are outside and you feel that in the world you are exposing your fragility or your weaknesses, you are going to expose, it's going to be difficult. This is why you need to have people around you where you can share your questions and your discussions. And you have lots of Muslims, they are on their own and they are not sharing. So to share my weakness to someone who can understand my weakness is helping us both to be stronger. But this is where the Muslims are very shy to talk about this because we pretend too much. We pretend too much. Yes, I'm a Muslim. Okay. You know this kind of attitude that, which is exactly the opposite of humility, with questioning. We don't remember enough that very often, you know, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was crying. Once he was in the morning crying, and I promised that this verse will be everywhere in my books, everywhere, and if you open my website, it's the first verse. There is in the creation of heaven and earth and the alternation of nights and days, sign of those who are full of insight. And when he got this revelation, when Bilal came in the morning to call for prayer, he saw him crying. I said, why are you crying? And he said, because I got this verse. And this verse is not talking about punishment, it's not talking about, you know, hell, it's not talking about anything but the beauty of the creation and the signs. All this has a meaning. And he cried. And he said, mind you, if you read this verse and you don't ponder over it. Meaning that this is the way he himself was sometimes very, very sad and fragile and strong at the same time. And they were seeing him crying. We, as Muslims today, it's a universe where we can do things that are completely wrong on our own, and we pretend to be strong with our community where we should show and have this kind of type of discussion. So all what you are saying here is, from where you start is this introduction to Islam, but you should not start on your own. You should get people with whom you can have study circles, get the knowledge, share views, people that you trust. It's very much about trusting, you know, a group of people. Now, sharing and speaking and exposing, this will come. But as I'm always saying, getting knowledge, getting the means at the same time that you should show some courage in the way you deal with this. But not in a silly way, with wisdom, Try to know what are your priorities. You know, the Greek statement, the wise man doesn't say what he thinks, but he thinks what he says. Think about it. Sometimes it's good not to speak too much, but you have steps and you have a strategy. Not everything is good. I remember someone telling me, you know what, Tariq, because I was struggling for something, and he told me, you know what, Tariq, you are wrong if you are right too early. It's true. Take your time. No other questions? Yes?
The goal you talked about is very difficult to achieve. So
what is difficult?
The goal, like serving and serving others, and so.
Can I ask you why you say that serving is difficult?
No, I mean like you said like to make it a goal, like the attraction of money is there, the gains is there. So So you have to target to serve the people. So achieving that goal is like very difficult to motivate yourself. So how you recommend you should?
That's good. That's a good question. You cannot deny the fact that you can be attracted by money and fame and positions. That's it. Now, when you deal with, and this is why I said you have to have two legs. There is one which is a spiritual dimension, which has to do, at the end of the day, what do you want to achieve with your life? So you can't get these questions answered if you don't go towards something which is the very meaning of my life. Why are you here? So if you don't question this, if you don't have people around you that are helping you to, be careful. There is a verse in the Quran that all the people can understand, and when I'm talking about this, with Buddhists and Hindus and Christians and Jews, they completely understand. When it says, لا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم. Don't be like those who forget God. At the end, they end up forgetting themselves. In fact, if you lose the direction, you end up thinking about your own interest, and your ego is taking over. So it's difficult to struggle with your ego. But this is life. This is life. So the opposite of intellectual humility is arrogance, and the opposite of intellectual modesty is showing off and making knowledge something which is the goal in itself, and you title the goal in itself. So this is why you have to ask yourself, it's not easy. This is in fact the very essence of what we call jihad and nafs, which is the way you deal with yourself, and you try to get the very essence of this. But one question, which is the starting point of your journey, and especially when you are within academia, is who do you want to serve? In which way are you useful? Are you useful? That's a good question. Are you useful? What is the meaning of your presence? And then you ask this deep question, and I would say that if we have Muslim organizations or Muslim students, these are questions that they should not only ask to Muslims, they should ask to every single human conscience. Because you can have people who are very bright, getting the best degrees, and they are very dangerous. Because they are arrogant, because they want money, and because they don't care about people. And sometimes we respect them because we look at the brightness of their mind, but we don't see the darkness of their objectives. When a bright mind has dark objectives, you are dealing with a dangerous being. These questions? The last one, and then I come to these questions. Because he will think that I am avoiding the question. Or some difficult one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say, we're living in societies with a high factor of uncertainty. So like from outside, like as a non-Muslim, look at Muslims through the media, through all the things, what they know. So Muslims get very much uncertain as well as the non-Muslims, So the one thing is like we are fighting on all sides, like between the Muslims themselves, like not fighting, but I mean, like trying to get to know each other. There are so many from so many different cultures, We don't know nothing about within the Islamic community, We don't know much about the culture. We're sitting here with maybe 20, 30 cultures of Islamic background. And I think one to give us a practical thing is like maybe you can give us an advice on that as Muslims, like as students and so on, that we should start a dialogue within ourselves, like a South-South thing, and maybe then we have more the certainty of reflecting and showing that we have a more something to have to be proud of or whatever, like be more self-conscious, and at the end that we all trust in Allah and God, and and do something for this society as well, and reflect it then with this positive attitude. But we don't know nothing about the others, from what country are they all from, you know. I know it's a real lack, you know. We have even, there's a certain of racism even in the, you know, rap in this as well, you know, because Muslims themselves, they hear like news from that country or that country within the Islamic, you know, Ummah, and they get uncertain too, so I don't know how to face that.
Thank you for this question. I think that part of the answer is already in the way you put the question, because I completely agree with you. We tend to come to this very superficial unity, oh, this is a Muslim organization for Muslims and we are all Muslims and we are working for Islam. And the starting point within the Muslim community or on campus, the diversity of the backgrounds, the cultures, the understanding is not challenging. We don't have intra-community dialogue. And it's coming from something which is sometimes a lack of knowledge, yes, lack of time, that we don't take time to sit down together and to know each other. There is also something which is what you said, racism. And I keep on challenging this, because there are two levels of diversity when it comes to what the communities and the Muslim communities are dealing with in the West. The first one has to do with this, where there is a gap between immigrants and African American, for example, in this country, and between and among immigrants there are also problems with people coming from Asia and people coming from the Arab countries. And with all this, we are talking about the unity of the Muslims, where we are scattered between interpretations and cultures. And we can't have an open mind if we don't just sit with people and listen to what they have to say. And we don't do this. We are with our people. This is my group, and this is my culture. We have it with the mosques, and we have it even on campus. While I would expect students to overcome this and to go beyond that and to come to a discussion on something which is intellectually rooted, be passionate and more intellectual. We're not doing this. And the second problem that we have, and there is a great deal, that's true, you know, even in this university here or elsewhere, the dream. That's not a problem. But when you are coming from, you know, the social fractures, and this is the second division that we are not dealing with, is where we have social classes. This is a reality. You have poor people and rich people. But I'm sorry, what I got from the messenger and from the whole history of Islam is the one who is my model, who is the messenger. He was facing the rich, relying on the poor, loving the poor, facing the rich. Not what we are doing now, praising the rich, forgetting the poor, and even neglecting them. If you are a student in one university here, I'm sorry, any student who wants to improve this society, any American who wants America to be more faithful to its principles and to reconcile America with its principles, which should start with this, is dealing with diversity, mutual respect, equal rights, and getting something which is internal discussions and discussion within the society. Start with yourself within your community. We don't do the job. We don't. And if the students are not doing this, who is going to do it? The students are reproducing the same fractures and the same very narrow understanding. And I think that this is very, very dangerous. But I agree with you. So in your question was the answer. And I think that this is what we have to promote in a way where we can come together and make it something which is not naive as to the social structures and the cultures. It's not because we are all Muslims that we understand each other. And we end up having mosques for the Turkish, mosque for the Pakistani, mosque for the Arabs. In my country, I'm even smiling because now in my country we have mosque for Swiss converts. They don't want to mix with others. They say, no, this is not us. You even have now voices coming in this country saying the converts should lead the Muslims because the Arabs are messing out, so that's not the way. What's that? Where are we heading? So at least at campuses, we need some young students, men and women, to understand that and to open up. This is where we can have an open, critical debate where we are not driven by the wrong superficial understanding. So I come to the, okay, go ahead and then I come to the question. Yeah?
As a Muslim student, especially one of the Muslim students later in the city, I want you to give advice to the MSA and the new generation of MSA, as well as what's your advice for the local masjids in supporting the MSA as well?
About what?
About everything, like any advice you give to the masjids or MSA, basically.
Wow, but that is huge. It's a simple question. There are lots of things to say. But I think that what I was trying to say, was some advices. I hope that you got the message.
Could you address ideological pluralism in that light?
In the light of what is happening in Syria?
No, ideological.
In the light of what?
Ideological, like Islamic ideological differences.
So
you talked about the racial differences in our community, like the Pakistanis being out by themselves and the Arabs. But what about with regards to the application of Islam itself, Muslims and their diverse Islamic background?
Yes, okay. So I'm not sure that I would say ideological when it comes to this, because ideological could be the political side, and we still have also to deal with it. So we have many interpretations in Islam, and what I am always repeating is that there is something which is called accepted diversity in Islam. So I might disagree with the literalists, but I cannot say that they are not Muslims or they are extremists. Some of them are very conservative, very literalist, that's fine. I would never put anyone outside Islam if he or she tells me, I am a Muslim, I believe in one God, and the messenger is the last messenger, that's fine, you are a Muslim. Now, your interpretation is open, as long as you don't make something halal haram and something haram halal. So when you are not transforming our rules into something which was illicit, you make it licit, or something which is licit, you make it illicit, that's fine. We may disagree on some of the interpretations, we may disagree on the limits, but you are a Muslim and we have to accept this. So this is where it's important to acknowledge the fact that some are literalists, some are reformists, some are more attracted by the mystical side of Islam, the Sufi trend, some are rationalists, and that's fine. We need to deal with this. So we deal with different cultures and different interpretations, and we need to accept this. And this is a challenge. So for the local mosque or for the MSA, don't get the sense that you have the only right interpretation of Islam. Let the people find their way and open the floor for the people to express themselves. You have women who are wearing the headscarves, others no. Who told you that, is telling you that you have to ban women from, no, let the people come and discuss and be open and let this being a discussion. So this is a side where the accepted diversity of Islam is not always easy to deal with, but it's an enrichment within the community, and this is something that we have to promote. The second thing is, and it's not always easy, is when you deal with the political diversity. That we are now, for example, when it comes to Syria, there are many interpretations and many conflicting interpretations, and it can go very far in the tension. So this is where no one can say to another one, you are less Muslim because you support such and such political position. So we need to understand that we have different political interpretations as much as religious interpretations, and we need to have a broader way to deal with these issues as Muslims, knowing that it's not easy, especially when we are dealing with very difficult political times. It's not easy now what is happening in the Middle East or what is happening even here I remember that I was with African Americans just before the first election of George W. Bush, the first election. And I was with African Americans. And they were so upset with the immigrants. They say they don't get it. They are going to vote for George W. Bush and this guy is bad. And I was with immigrants who say, African American, they don't get the real sense of what politics is. After a while, I should say that African American were quite right. That the immigrants, they heard George W. Bush once saying something about, Arabs and Palestine. They said, yes, he's going to. And they were just silly. This is the way they deal with politics, is just not to, and there is a lack of at least communication within the society. So let me, just to end, I think I can go through the last questions here and then it will be okay. What do you think about Muslims who use historical events, distortions of opinion facts, to ignite renewed discourse such as Dr. Adnan Ibrahim and Hassan Farhan Maliki? Is this a proper approach to close the gap between Shia and Sunni divide? I'm following especially what Dr. Adnan Ibrahim in Austria is doing and trying to come with the past to, and I think it's not, I'm quite critical about this methodology, because I don't think that this is the way, and sometimes having people not telling us exactly from where they speak is problematic. Tell us who you are exactly if we want. It's well known that I am a Sunni scholar. I'm coming from this tradition, so you position yourself where you are and you open the discussion and you don't try to pretend and not say, and then I would say that this is not good. So to look at the past, to try to resolve all the problem of the present, and to think that the tradition is going to help us, and sometimes having a way of dealing with history which is problematic. I think this is not going to help to have this constructive way of dealing with the present and the future. This would be my position on this. So I don't think that we should then look at the history in a distorted way once, and sometimes it's not only a distorted way, it's an idealized way. The Muslims, the problem that we have today is that we are idealizing the past and hoping the future and passive in the present. So this is where we are. They were so great, we are helpless, and we hoped for the best. And they say, inshallah. Okay, inshallah is, yes, you can't say coming in the future, you have to say inshallah, but inshallah doesn't mean sit down and wait and see. Inshallah means stand up, chill, and say inshallah. Inshallah is a call for being active, not an excuse for being passive. Which is the way we deal sometimes with our way of dealing with the question. A good question here, which is directly directed to me. Qatar is funding the bloody insurrection in Syria with Saudi and the West. Then who do you deal with how do you deal with the dichotomy of being part of ethical reform in a country that is doing the opposite? Good question. Good question, because I'm there, and from the very beginning. By the way, we can have on the Syrian issue and the way it's dealing, the way we are dealing, I will come to this. But as to Qatar, my position there was very clear from the beginning. I'm dealing with a country, and I'm dealing with the Qatar Foundation, which is in Qatar. It's not black and white. You have people who are working in a specific way, pushing towards education. So I put myself in this, and I said, okay, I'm going, because my position in Oxford is my main permanent position, and I said, okay, I'm going to work here in this institution with two conditions. First is complete political autonomy and independence. Whatever I want to say, I'm going to say it. You want it, that's fine. You don't want me, don't bring me there. I'm not going to work. And second is financial autonomy, that I am free within the center to do whatever I want, to bring whoever I want. And these were the two conditions that I had from the very beginning, with the money for me being paid by Oxford as a professor there, and not being involved in anything which is putting me in a situation of dependency towards the society. And it means that if you read, for example, the book The Arab Awakening, I'm quite tough with Qatar. And before even going there, what I said is I'm not going to be, I mean, many people were surprised. Now they start understanding what I said. This was 10 years ago, when I said I'm not going to be involved in anything which has to do with Al Jazeera as an Arabic channel. Because many people were celebrating and say, I have some questions. And I said it and I wrote it. So, I'm very surprised that people are not asking me about my position in Oxford, because I'm in a country in Britain where they were supporting the invasion of Iraq and then of Libya, and it's quite a bad record if you think about Britain. But it's as if you speak about Qatar and you don't speak about Oxford in Britain under Blair. Okay? And I think the question is, wherever you are, is how much independence and intellectual autonomy do you have? And independence in what you are doing. So, the book that I wrote, Radical Reform, was full of questions, and I needed an institution to try to translate this into reality. And this is something which is important, to try to do the job, which is let us come with scholars and try to promote ethical understanding. As long as you can do it somewhere without being prevented from thinking, promoting thoughts, that's fine. Now, if one day I find myself in a position where I cannot speak my mind, because I'm there, I would stop. I say, I can't. If you prevent me from saying, I'm not going to say. And this is something which is the starting point of my position in intellectual terms. I'm not looking at where I am. I'm looking at the way I behave where I am. So I'm not under the authority of any state. And all, if you read I don't know if you are following what I'm writing on my website, you will see that even in the last, when I was talking about Mali, I'm very critical about Qatar and its international policy. When it comes to Syria, I'm against Bashar al-Assad. I'm against him, and I think a dictator should leave. This is my position. But I'm not naive as to the opposition. I know that they are divided and there is a problem. So when I was with the Tunisian president, Monsef Marzouki, and he told me, I have a problem with Qatar because they want to give weapons to the Syrian and they are promoting a civil war which is going to last. He was right at that time, and this is what is happening now. So I don't think it's the answer. So I'm critical of their policy. But, and this is where I think that the way I reconcile this is do the job within education and try to promote. And I can tell you that in Qatar there are people, in fact even Sheikh Hamouza herself, no one can deny the fact that among all these people in the Gulf countries, to put all this money for education city, it's good. To try to promote education and to put all this money to get institutions and trying to have a faculty of Islamic studies and all this, I would like all these people to put as much money in education as they are doing. So you cannot just, it's not black and white. You can, when there is something which is, okay, that's good, at least this is good. At least she's trying to do something on education. And to have women be more educated. I think we have to celebrate this. If in this institution, you can find a way to have an institution that is promoting thoughts that are new and the way I presented them this morning, at least we have to take advantage of this, as long as this is not put under the pressure of a political authority preventing you from speaking out. And I would say and tell you that they all know over there that I will never give up speaking out in all these circles. And even when we had this I remember that we had this, there is something which is Brookings and Doha American relationship, and they have a conference every year. And 3 years ago, Madeleine Albright came. This was just before I was able to come back to the States in 2009, about 3 years ago. And she was there, and she was telling us how much, the Bush administration was bad and how much they were before good, especially in Iraq. I said, I'm sorry, I just want to remind you that your administration took the decision to boycott Iraq, killing hundreds of thousands of people out of this boycott. So don't come now to tell us. So this was in Qatar. So I think that this is where the voices should be heard and not having a black and white and simplistic vision. Why are the Islamists failing in reform and only supply rhetoric to the public? Good question. I tried to answer this question yesterday evening, in fact, by saying that the Islamists today, once again, we have to be fair. With all the criticism that we may have towards what they are not doing, at least we have to acknowledge the fact that after 2 years, in the situation where we are now, it's very difficult just to deliver. It's difficult for any political trend. Having said that, not to go too quick, too fast in judging, means also that we have to look at what is happening and say, why don't they deliver now? And what are the problems? And mainly, I think, is they were well organized and they got this historical credibility that helped them to be elected. Now, the vision as to what should be done in this society, the steps, the priorities, and this independence and this courage as to come with solutions is not there. We don't see solutions. We see rhetoric, we see things that have to do with the structure, and they have to reassess now that they are in power. Many of the priorities that they had, it's not enough to, and they are so obsessed, and this is my problem, they are so obsessed with the international recognition telling them, yes, you are legitimate to rule, that they are forgetting many of the other principles that are so important when it comes to reforming the society. So if you want to be acknowledged as legitimate and you don't come with the courage to promote new visions and new strategies and new policies and social policies, economic stability and new thinkings in this field, it's not going to happen. So I would say not to judge too quickly, but to be critical as to what is happening. And what is happening now is that the credibility they had as a counterpower is now being lost as people running the countries. This is something which is important. And in one of the texts that I wrote about this, I questioned, I said, it might be that to win is to lose on the long run. Because what you have now is something which is difficult. And the last question, would you consider the censorship of Islamic tradition by the Saudi scholars, like their distortion regarding the 10 volumes of Fatawa, Ibn Taymiyyah, the book of Tasawwuf, ethical? I can't enter the country anyway, so I'm going to speak. I cannot go to Saudi Arabia now, so I'm banned from the country for, it has been a long time now. And there are many things that in the Saudi government now, even though it's the center for the Muslims, when we are directing our prayers, that we have to be critical of. So it's about the...
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you. You said you're banned from Saudi Arabia, and if you want to do your prayer on the shoulder...
I went already, alhamdulillah. So
how do they forbid a person to not do?
That's the reality of it. So they prevent many people, and sometimes you can enter, you don't know if you can get out. So I prefer to be banned than to be kept. But this is the reality. And but just to say something is that once again, for contemporary Muslim voices and understandings, it's important for us not just to once again speak about the Saudi regime in a black and white. Within the Saudi regime now you have people who are working to reform the system. You have people who are working on the education of women. You have very, very, very strong trends of women being educated in Saudi Arabia now. That this is very important. It's going to change the country in the future. And we have to push from within those trends that are helping to get a better understanding. Now, there are things that are done by the government when it comes to everything which has to do with all these kind of things, literature, censorship, distorting the reality. This is why we have to speak, and we have to speak out by saying this is done in the name of Islam, and it has nothing to do with the principles of our religion. What is done now is, you know, at least, you know, you have to respect some places where we have our history when it comes to the Prophet's life. They are distorting this by saying, if you go there and you are, going there to visit these places and to remember, it could be shirk, it could be associating something to God, so we destroy everything. I say, what's that? What's this silly understanding of what history is? But no, these are places where it's so important. Of course, we don't want anything which is association to our worship, the tawheed, which is essential. But to go as far as this is a problem. This is something. And then what you do is you destroy all the areas where our history is, to build these big buildings around the Kaaba, and just for the people who are rich to come and to just have to come for a few meters and to pray. This is a problem. There is something which is wrong in this understanding. So I would say to be constructively critical, and if you haven't done your Hajj, wait before speaking. So perform your pilgrimage and then start talking. Oh, I was banned from here, you know, 6. And it's also important for me to know that it happened on both sides. 6 years in the States, 1 year in France. I was banned from France, and but you know what is happening? No, but it's a good, these are good news. 6 countries at the beginning, and now, one per one, and this could be hope for the future, things are moving. So it was Egypt, Tunisia. Egypt, I haven't visited Egypt. I hope to go soon because my problem was the army, and the army is still very powerful. Tunisia, I went after 18 years. Syria, I was banned for 18 years, and now I'm waiting 18 years. Yes, because I was very, very tough with Hafiz al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad, but mainly was, and I was in Geneva, and in Geneva there was Rifat al-Assad, the brother, was there, and you know he's working with the security, and this guy is a bad one. Very bad. No, torture, killing, and yes, and all the family. So this was it. Libya, Algeria for a while, and Saudi Arabia. So now Egypt is almost okay. Tunisia is okay. Libya is over. it's more. I'm waiting for Saudi Spring.
Sorry, one last question. Speaking of speaking out, so I worked in Jordan. Being critical in a lot of these countries, whether it's the Emirates, Saudi, even Jordan, you get in a lot of trouble very fast. So how do you speak what you want to say and be critical without getting banned? Because I don't want to create a 6-country list.
You don't want to be banned. You don't?
No.
Okay. No, I think that once again, and especially, I'm always calling the students to be courageous and to speak out. But to be courageous and to speak out doesn't mean that you are doing it in a silly way with no wisdom. So how do you deal with this is also something that you have to think about. It's to strategize the whole thing. To find people who can speak. You know how Amnesty International is working. If you are dealing with Tunisia, we never put the Tunisian man or woman at the forefront of the criticism. Put someone from another country, because it was very dangerous to put someone who is coming from Tunisia. They can kill the people from his or her family. It was tough. So you have to, and then for you to try to find a way where you can be effective. So sometimes you speak out, or you have a group of people and you try to have something which is a strategy, but do not expose yourself in a way which is counterproductive. Very quickly, you're not going to be heard and you're going to be bad. So it's useless. No one is so you have to find a way where you can be heard and sometimes to try to get the knowledge. So this is something which is, courage doesn't mean to just speak out without intelligence. But from my position, anything could happen. When I was banned from this country, I heard just many groups here who were using this as saying, oh, it meant that we were, it was right. And then the fact that Hillary Clinton came, and then it put me in a position where I know that anything could happen, but I know also that in my position to say what I'm saying, I'm still protected in a way by where I am. If now they come and say you are going to be banned from the country, I would say that's fine. I prefer not to come in your country if your country is preventing me from speaking. But it will be very difficult to do this. So sometimes you know that from where you are, you can do things that others cannot do from where they are. It's necessary to say it. It's necessary to speak out. So this is what I'm trying to do wherever I come, and I do this with Muslim majority countries. And to pay the price, for 18, the last time I went to Egypt, it was in 95. And in fact, I was saved from being, and I had to stay. And this is what I heard, that they were expecting me there. And then the Swiss government were telling me, the only thing that we can do is to prevent you from being tortured. How many years you are going to stay in jail, we can't tell you. So don't go. And then I got the message. And then I think that this is where you have to know where you are in the picture and do as much as you can. But don't, never, in the name of wisdom, disappear from denouncing and from speaking the truth. This is the problem that I have with some who say, no, wisdom, be wise, and then they disappear. No, we have to find a way to, no, because this is, some of the Muslims, when they speak about, al-hikmah, وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا, and then they end up being, this is a lack of courage in wise disguise. So this would be my advice. I just want, in your name, really, in your name, to, once again, I want to thank MSA for this invitation, but Safiullah, who was very instrumental in bringing me, who is here also, I really want to thank you, both because, and you especially, because it has been 2 years for him to try to get me here. And he has been with me since yesterday evening. He came to the airport, and he brought with him many people who are involved in dialogue and trying their best. So I really want you to acknowledge beyond my presence is the fact that I wouldn't be here if for the last 2 years he was not involved in trying to make it possible. And I want to thank you for being present and having this wonderful meeting with you this afternoon. Thank you.